Here we are, getting started with another Coach's Culture podcast, talking about different topics. I am Lindsay Huddleston, here with my greatest partner in crime, Keith to the new crib, Tate. Good to see you again. How you doing?
Good. Definitely. It's been a good weekend, good week. So we got the podcast up and running last week.
We got up and running, man.
Website, podcast, video.
All that. Went from being a discussion to being live. So hopefully we could be an encouragement to other individuals.
Absolutely.
You and I sat down and talked about coming together with some ideas, and then went from that to being in fruition. So thank you for being a great pusher of ideas and making that happen. So I guess we don't need a moral victory when it comes to that topic, right?
Correct.
Moral victory, something that comes up a lot, and it comes up in many cases when there's been loss, when the primary goal was not achieved.
Right.
But so often you hear moral victories, and to some degree, the terminology is somewhat comforting for some. It may discourage others to hear it. You always got that bah humbug person, like, I don't want to hear nothing about no moral victory.
Correct.
But let's talk about the importance of moral victory. So when I say moral victory, Keith, what do you think of?
I think of looking at the details, looking at the glass half full. Being more about optimist, trying to find some teaching points, just pointing out the positives in any situation. Sure.
That's good. It makes me think about, from a sports psychology standpoint, reshaping and reframing how you look at things. And, you can always find a positive outlook. However, I'll play devil's advocate because it's good to have that every now and then to think about it. And I was thinking about that prior to us talking about this interesting topic is, does that end up creating a culture of mediocrity when you continue to embrace moral victories? Not saying you can't look at something from a moral victory standpoint, but our moral victory is just saying, hey, you got second place, man.
Right. You know what? That is a tough one. At myself being, very competitive, it's definitely, as a player or as a person, it is definitely tough to take a loss and try to spin it into a positive thing.
Sure.
And being a coach, and I would say at my level, at a freshman level, because I have to focus on development.
Okay, correct. Development.
So it's, at every level might be different to, how you want to incorporate. I mean, because in the NBA, there's really no moral victories unless maybe you're a young team that you're still 3-4 years out from being in the playoffs. That you have to find those, say the Philadelphia 76ers with the
Trust in the process,
right? It's like, hey, you know what? Let's try to, find the moral victories of what we're doing and so on. So I would say that, it could create a culture of mediocrity and excuse making.
Sure.
I just think at different levels and what your expectations are for that season.
Right.
That, maybe you don't want to look at things as moral victories because you are worried about the bottom line of wins and losses.
Well, especially if you're a coach in a competitive environment, which most coaches are in a competitive environment, worry about job security.
Right.
And that's a perfect topic for Coach's Culture. Put a pin in that one. But also, I think with moral victories, maybe it's one of those things. It's like the wild card in the deck. You only get so many of them.
Yes, you can't go back to that well too many times.
Sure.
Saying, hey guys, it's okay, we lost, but we're doing this because of the kids or the players, adults, whoever you're coaching. They'll probably tune you out because they know a loss is a loss. They got their friends, family, teachers, professors. They know that you guys took a loss. You can't go back to them and say, well, but the coach said we played hard.
Sure. Well, in golf, and I know you get out there when you can, Keith, to support a good event or something like that, you get the mulligans, right?
Yes.
So that's the do-over. So you don't get the do-over. So can we say in coaching that, that moral victory is that one mulligan you can use maybe during the season?
I definitely feel, a couple of times, and it's not even to, I wouldn't say you address it with your team as, this is obviously you're not going to use those words with them. That is a moral victory. It's about, again, it's easy for me. I have to reference my level, the freshman level, high school. I mean, even JV and varsity to some extent, but with the freshmen, and I would say definitely JV too, is that you have to point out the positives.
Sure.
So, you want to show them like, hey, yeah, I'm not happy we lost.
Right.
However, you have to keep them engaged.
Sure.
And
You have to find a way to keep them engaged.
You were involved with, the Waverly football team during the year.
Correct.
Where, didn't have the best, record, and I'm sure the coaches had to find a way, and you, with dealing with the team, probably had to try to find some ways in order to keep the kids and everyone engaged and involved to try to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. You have to do that, and you can't discredit moral victories, because moral victories are what you may need in a crisis. And, when you think about how you dole those out, how these moral victories can be like a mulligan or something like that, you really have to be careful with it and hope that you don't need many of them. But to your point, when you have developing teams, and what's a development team? I guess we can argue, true indeed, the Philadelphia 76ers, but just in any program that is not expected to go far into the playoffs. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's just, it kind of depends on your expectations, I think, too, as a coach and for your team.
Sure.
That's just, if I felt like my team might not be that good to compete in every game, I might have to, all right, I can't just look at wins and losses only, which I already don't, but I can't really put an emphasis on that as much, because I know might be tough for us to win games based on talent level, that you have to find the silver lining. You just have to find the silver lining to keep the kids engaged, to keep them thinking about, hey, you got JV, you have varsity.
Right.
Let's worry about doing the right things in order to move forward.
So you're saying with your career coaching this far, and I always make a note that you've had a great coaching career and what you're doing. So do moral victories help you? And you sharing that?
No.
Say no.
No, just I've been blessed and fortunate that so this is going to be my 4th year being a head coach of freshman.
Congratulations.
For 3 years, we won't count my first. My first year was my first year. Just
everybody's first year.
Oh my gosh, just thinking this is how things are supposed to go, and didn't go that way. So it was just still a big learning experience for me. However, I still had a team that we were above 500. But we could have, and I tell people this all the time, we lost probably 3-4 games because of me.
Sure. Coaches don't like to take their losses, but there's definitely some that can fall back.
Right, absolutely. And so I feel like I've been blessed with talent. So and I tell, if you ask me, hey, how you guys looking for the year once we have a team, we're going to probably be in every game. That's this will be my 4th year, probably the same thing for this year. We're going to be able to win every game. Like, we're going to have a chance to win every game. I'm not. There's not somewhere I'm thinking like, oh man, this is going to be a rough one.
Right.
We got a chance to compete and win every game.
That's great if you can look at your team and objectively evaluate them and feel you're going to be in every game. So my question now is, with moral victory, when is enough and moral victories won't fly? When do you get to a point, or do you ever get to a point where you say, well, we're not accepting moral victories now, and that's not part of the discussion?
Right. Overall, you know what? I think moral victories are tough. If I had to give you a definite answer, I would say there's no such thing as moral victories.
Right.
However, there are teaching points.
There are teaching points.
And there's silver linings. There's glass half full, but we can't count this as a moral victory. And if you do, you have to count it amongst yourself and your staff.
So it's not a public.
It's not necessarily, hey guys, hey kids, you know what? You guys play that. So you might not want to dole out too much, I don't know what the word is, excitement or jubilation
or
too much
victory and credibility to it.
Yeah, you just have to. I think it's more so in your mind, or you talk to your staff, like, you know what, hey, I'm glad that this happened. We did these things. It's kind of a moral victory for us. However, I wouldn't necessarily try to share that with the kids.
Sure. So moral victory does have a place, and you have to be very unique and selective with when you use it and who you use it with.
Correct.
And it comes to a point where can't get too much usage out of it after the first time. It's kind of like, a spare tire. It can only ride so many miles, and then you got to put that one up and get back.
Correct. So I have a question for you in regards to moral victory. Do you feel like there are moral victories? Do you feel like, it's kind of the same thing that I was saying, whether it's just the silver lining and having optimism, or do you feel like it's something that needs to be shared with the kids, or just amongst the staff? What is your take on that?
Actually, Keith, sitting here and exploring this more with you has really helped my thought on it evolve a little bit because I think we don't like to put too much thought in moral victories. Moral victories are not associated with the positive. You want to put thoughts into the championship. You want to put thoughts into winning. So we probably don't put a lot of thought into moral victory. However, having this discussion with you has made me think further that I do see it having significance, but it's only able to be used at a limited, if not singular moment. That's the only way to make it that. That's the only time to give you something, you can get something good for that. Because I think if you do find yourself, even if it's among a coaching staff, even if it's among, your kitchen cabinet of people that you just really communicate with, checking too many, MVs in the box instead of W's or L's, you find yourself not addressing things that's leading to a moral victory and not an actual win on paper.
Gotcha.
Now, we can talk about other times where, it can be a win, but it was an ugly win, and it may not be the one you're most proud of. So, I don't know, is that the opposite? But can you live with that on Sunday or Saturday morning or having a moral victory taste in your mouth?
I'm not going to lie. It's tough. Some of the wins that we do have and early, those drive me up a wall.
Really?
Drive me up a wall. Drive me up a wall. I mean, say this past year, like I said, went 19-1. Some of the games that we won, just because you're trying to push your kids to reach a certain level each time, regardless of the opponent, regardless of the refs, all those things. Those wins that are ugly, and you know that your team is not playing up to their potential, and it has nothing to do with the other team. Those are, 2 years ago, the team we went 17-3. I think it was like the fourth game of the season. We won by like 28 points.
Sure.
I didn't rip into the team more than I did after that game.
Really?
After the game,
that was the most you had to give it to.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
I was probably red, kicking bags.
Oh man,
I was heated just because we were just so much better than that.
Sure.
And then the games that we lost, I was cool as a cucumber.
Yeah. So, sometimes you say
not that it was a moral victory, but just you guys played up to. We didn't win, and I'm upset we didn't win. However, you guys played good. We could have played better,
right? But
it wasn't because you didn't kind of reach your potential.
Sure, you played to your full potential. Well, I guess it comes down to something you said earlier about expectations. And it depends on what expectations you have for a team. And, like we said, what feeling do you want? That ugly victory taste in your mouth on Saturday morning after a tough game, or the moral victory taste? Which one tastes better?
Yeah. In the moment, right after the game. So Friday night, the ugly victory is awful.
Sure.
But yeah, that next day you're like,
you can live with it.
All right, cool.
Check
We
that
got
box and moving on, right?
So real quick, discussing that and victories and the next day and so on.
Sure.
How do you feel about momentum? What is your take? Just your philosophy on momentum, whether it's scientific, analytically. What is do teams carry momentum from one game to another? Whether that's in a positive direction or a negative direction.
Sure.
What is your, what is your take on momentum?
No, very, very good question. I'm actually a big proponent, I should say, of momentum. And whenever there's an opportunity to talk to particularly a client, a young person, or a team that I'm working with about momentum, I'm really excited about that, because that's the one X factor that many people leave out of the equation when it comes down to going up against something that's adversarial or meeting a challenge. They say, oh man, I have this big old hill to climb. I have this, really exhaustive thing I have to do. And because of that, the anxiety begins to grow because they think about this huge task instead of thinking about if I just stay present in the moment, because the one thing they forget about is momentum. They forget that once you start something, even if it's using a scientific equation to say if a ball starts at the top of a hill, it will continue to increase momentum, speed, and power as it rolls down that hill, the smallest ball to the biggest. So athletes, I think, many times become overwhelmed with anxiety. And that anxiety becomes a paralysis. It paralyzes them. It stops them from being able to move forward because they're thinking about so many other things that either, may not even happen, and if they do happen, you have no control over it. But the momentum, as you brought up earlier, is a great tool to be able to use. And can African teams carry it? I believe so. They can carry it from one game to the next. It's really important that a coach and their supporting cast is able to tie into that and buy into that and create a theme to continue to follow that theme. And also on the negative slant, when you start, losing, if you don't put something in place to, cut that off, to be able to, put a tourniquet on it, as we say, and be able to stop the bleeding, that momentum can continue to carry, and you have to be very careful. And I think a perfect example of that momentum, and you can relate to this too as a coach, is when a player makes a bad play and gets subbed out of a game. So when someone has to come over to see you on the coaching sideline and you correct them, say what you have to say, and you have to get back to coaching the game, that person moves on down, and maybe an assistant coach is talking to them. And then when they get to the jungle, which is the players, that's no matter where you're playing at, where there's anarchy down there on the bench. People are going to say all kind of unfiltered things, And so now that momentum you had of making a bad play, being subbed out, so you're kind of being recognized for making a bad play, getting whatever feedback you get from the coach, even if it's positive, hoping that it's positive, because a good chance it may not be. Also getting that, re-emphasized by an assistant coach or someone, and then going into, the bench where it's just wildness and madness as far as what people say.
Yeah, parents sitting behind you.
Sure. So look what we have. And that's why, insert someone as a sports psychology consultant, whether you have me on your sideline or someone that's another coach who can say, let me make sure no matter what's going on in this game, I want to have a certain level of emotional control so I can speak with and relate to these players to be able to impact the momentum, either the negative momentum that came from a negative play to a negative interaction with my coach, staff, and my players and the rest of the basketball world as we know it, based on what they're experiencing, or a positive thing happening and then being able to respond and carrying that momentum, as in kid coming out from the play, hey, good job, man, you did a good job on that, keep that up. Pats on the back, attaboys and all that, all the way down the line, whether it's a young lady or a young man. But to your point, momentum can go both ways.
Right. And real quick, when you're talking, I thought about something that's something I was going to implement during the season actually this year to help kids when they do make a bad play or if something's not going right, they airball a shot or whatever it may be. During the free throws, some teams like huddle up real quick. I don't know what they say. Who knows? This year, I'm going to have my kids huddle up during any breakage in play, and they all say, "Win the next play."
Wow.
Win the next play.
Wow.
And also when you said, about the kids being taken out after a mistake, which happens sometimes. I do it as well. I don't always do it, and I try not to do it because I want them to play through it. I just, I try my best if I get their eyes or we make some type of, we have some type of contact or communication. The play's over.
You emphasize that.
It's done.
So they're reading your body language and getting a positive response from your body language as opposed to a negative. So you're conscious of that.
Right. And it's more so, and we talked about this in the last episode, is they shoot an air ball or they turn the ball over. I'm like, so what? Play D. Let's get it back. Because again, I tell everyone all the time, you're going to miss shots. You're going to mess up. You're going to mess up. Be where you need to be on defense for me. Dive on the floor for me. Take the charge. Communicate. Make the right pass. Just set a good pick. I mean, just do all the other things still. I need you to stay engaged to do all the other things. So I just think that's something that I'm going to try this year. We'll see if it works.
That sounds like that'd be great.
Win the next play. That's what I want the kids to always. I always said that last year. Win each possession. So I'm going to try to emphasize that this year with the kids.
I think that's going to pay nothing but good dividends because that's going to get them to stay present in the moment. That's going to get them to have a positive outlook going forward. But as you sit here and you talk about, your perspective and style as a coach, I think it's something for our coaches who can pick up on. They can check out and see. You seem to be coming from what I would call a spirit of abundance as opposed to a spirit of scarcity. What do I mean by that? You're looking at things from a standpoint of, we can still do so much more no matter what's happening, what's going on. You're looking at things from a standpoint that there's still great things that can happen for us. Compared to scarcity is we don't have much. Look what happened. Look how this is going to hurt us. Those are two different perspectives, but they have a huge impact on how you are going to influence your players.
Correct.
So keep that attitude, and I think it's something our coaches who are tuning in need to pick up on. You know, what mindset are you coming from? And it affects so many things. And I was just doing some research earlier, as a matter of fact, about the moral engagement, the coaching impact on moral conduct. You know, and this is something we'll probably talk about at a later time, but I think it's important to know as coaches, you know, your personality impacts your players, not just in their off the court life, which is very important, but in their decision making and their ability to regulate things while on the court. So I think it's really good that you keep that mindset and you look at things like momentum and how important they are, as well as, you know, things like moral victories and where they play in your world, and that's a really important thing. That's good information, man.
It's good stuff, man. I'm glad we got to talk about moral victories, kind of hash that out, and again, talking about momentum and how to stop it or try to help continue it, or as you said, that you know, trying to get the kids to stay present and coaches stay present as well.
Very good. We have to make sure we let individuals know that this information is available. They can kind of get this and kind of replay this over and over again when it talks about those two topics. Well,
absolutely.
Keith, it's always a pleasure talking to you about good stuff.
Absolutely. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.
See you soon.
Let's see if you can hear this running. So that was 20 minutes. Pretty solid.